how many people?
38 years.
38 years?
Yes.
38 years. And during this time, on the side, Rabbi Brull was running the organization called Ahavas Yisrael. And they distribute, I don't know how much is it?
$2.5 million a year.
$2.5 million.
This community.
Just local in the community. So it's an honor to have Rabbi Brull. So Rabbi Brull now, he finally retired and he got himself a real job. And he's running, and he's running this multi-million dollar tzedakah organization. So thank you, Rabbi Brull.
Beautiful. Thank you.
One more thing. This Melavah Malkah and Rabbi Brull's speech is dedicated to Zecher Nishmas Leiv ben Shlomo and Gittel bas Nachum and Kassia bas Yeshua. Okay, good to watch.
Good luck, everybody. Everybody knows that Rabbi Diskin is a very special person, really very much is. Comes from a very special family, does very special things. He's a dear friend. Thank the entire family for allowing me in. At any point, if there's something I say that you'd like to ask me about, please feel free. Now, I have to tell you, I don't remember this ever happening before. I don't think it ever happened that before I was going to speak, the person who invited me called me, "But are you sure you know what you're going to say? You know what you're going to say?" This guy's a little bit nervous. He thinks there's an American speaker speaking in front of a wonderful Russian community. Is that correct? Did I say it correctly? Now, but he doesn't understand, Rabbi Diskin, is that this is my family. These are my people. You see, in 1939, my father lived in Poland with his wonderful family, and they had to make a decision that nobody in life should have to make. They had to make a decision whether they were going to remain behind with the Germans. The Germans were there, whether they would cross the border and go into a wonderful place called Siberia, and they would put their lives in danger. And my father's family had to make the decision, and my grandfather and his wife decided that the family should go to Siberia as opposed to staying there for the Germans, except for one brother. My father's older brother was married. His name was Yitzchak, and he stayed behind. And he did not survive because he stayed with the wonderful Germans. My father, my aunt told me, hid underneath the wagon, underneath some blankets when they crossed the border. And that's how they made it across into Siberia. And that's where my father was from 1939 to, you know better than I, 1942, 1943, until the Russians came into the war against the Germans. My father spent 3-4 years in Siberia with his family, in the freezing, ice-cold Siberia. That's where he was. So these are my people, Pesach, in case you weren't sure. I asked my father, a little bit about Siberia, and my father told me that it was so cold that when he went out to work, in order for him to eat, he would take a piece of bread with him in his pocket, and he would go out into the forest. My father's job was, one of his many jobs was to cut down trees. And they would sit there with a saw. He would be on one side and the other fellow would be on the other side. And they would cut down the tree like this. They would saw it down. And when it came time to eat, my father said he would have to take the piece of bread out of his pocket. It was so cold. He put it in his mouth. And he had to wait for it to melt until he could start chewing on the bread. That's what it was like for him during the war in Siberia. And then I asked him, I said, "Ta, did it ever get so cold that you didn't go to work?" So he said the rule was that if it was under 50 degrees, below zero, not 50 degrees that we know, 50 degrees below zero, then, I'm so sorry to ask you. So he said if it was 50 degrees below zero, then they would be off of work. So I said, "Ta, did it hit 50 degrees below zero?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Were you off of work?" He said, "No." They said, "It's only 50 degrees below zero. What's you ready? What's another few degrees?" So he worked. There was no not working in that time. But I wanted to tell you, I think my topic is chesed, but I want to tell you what my father did. His mother, my grandmother, sewed in his pockets, sewed a inside pocket inside of his pants. And so whatever my father worked at, he risked his life, and who knows what the Russians would do to him. And he would put in some food inside of that pocket. He would come home at night, and thank you so much. He would come home at night, and he would pull out all the food that he had inside of his pocket, and that's what he would give for his family, for everybody to eat a little bit. That's what he gave. I want to tell you a little bit about my mother. She didn't go to Siberia. My mother was from a place called Radzvigiv, which was next to Hungary. It was next to Hungary, next to Munkach. Once I was in Hungary, it was next to Munkach. Munkach was the big city in Hungary. My mother was right there. There was a little border that went across, and I saw that border. I went, a little bridge that went across, I saw that. In 1944, my mother was taken to Auschwitz, and after that to Bergen-Belsen. Now my mother's family did not survive. On the first day that she was there, her mother and her father, and her brother, little brother, Yosef Shleima, and other members of her family were killed on the first day that they walked into Auschwitz. They were taken to the crematorium, and they were burnt on that first day that they were there. But I want to tell you a story about my mother. I want to talk about Chesed. My mother is, in the last 10 years till today, has Alzheimer's. She's not well. And so I go back and forth every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, and I'll teach something about Chesed. I'll stop for a second. It's one thing to do Chesed once and twice and 3 times and 4 times. You know what a true Baal Chesed is? Somebody could do it over and over again. I go every 3 weeks to see my mother from Baltimore to New York. I drive in, and I'm not telling you, just tell me about me. I'm just giving you an example. I drive in every 3-4 weeks to my mother. It's 3.5 hours to get to New York. I see my mother for half an hour, 45 minutes. She doesn't know who I am, but I know who she is. I get back into the car and I drive back 3.5, 4 hours, and I do it every 3-4 weeks. She's my mother. I was there 2 weeks ago. She's in the hospital. Spent a few days with her in the hospital. She doesn't know who I am. But if we're talking about Chesed, that's called Chesed. That's who my mother is. So my aunt, Tante Reisel, went to see my mother, and my mother still eats. And she went into a store called Pashkas. Pashkas was a big candy store in Borough Park that no longer exists on 13th Avenue. And she told the 2 elderly ladies behind the counter that she picked up some chocolate. My mother likes chocolate orange peels with chocolate on it. And she would go pick up for my mother these orange peels of chocolate. And so she went into the store and she picked it up. She went behind the counter. Excuse me. And she says, my aunt says to the ladies, it's from my sister-in-law, Rabbi Brull, my mother. And so they tell her, Rabbi Brull, and the lady stops and says, no charge. And so my aunt says, and she says, no charge? Why shouldn't I pay you? She said, no, Rabbi Brull did for me, and I didn't know the story. She said, we were in Auschwitz together, we were in the concentration camp together, and Rabbi Brull worked in the kitchen. So that's my mother worked in the kitchen, whatever she did there. And there wasn't much food coming out of that kitchen, I can tell you. And so she said, Rabbi Brull would take, at the bottom of her skirt, there was like a pleat or a, whatever this is called, and she would put inside the peels of the potatoes, and she would stick them inside the bottom over here, and she would take them out, and she would give it to us to eat, and it kept us alive. You know what happened? The Rabbi Brull got caught taking out a potato peel or anything from that kitchen. There was no question. She was this far from death. She was dead. That was the risk my mother took. I want to know me, me, who in this world would risk their lives on a daily basis to go ahead and take the food that's inside. You talk about Chesed, would take and put the foods on the inside of the dress to be caught one time, and that would be it. So this lady said, that's what Rabbi Brull did for me. So Rabbi Brull gave me food to get me alive. You're coming to buy chocolate peels? Chocolate orange peels for it? I'm not charging you. Go take it there for free. So you talk about Chesed. That's unbelievable Chesed. We're going to talk about that here, but right now that's a little bit of what my mother did. So I want to take you a little bit further in life. A few years ago, there was a fellow in town. His fellow's name is Mordechai Snyder. Mordechai Snyder, for those who are aware, there's a Hasidic kollel in town now. Mordechai Snyder began this Hasidic kollel in town. He is somebody who has Hasidic blood, and he decided that that's what he wants to do for this community. So a few years ago, the Munkach Rebbe of Munkach, who lives in Borough Park, went back to Munkach, and he was going to have a bar mitzvah for a grandchild in Munkach, itself. And he took with him 200 Hasidim of his Hasidim, and they were going to go to the town of Munkach and have a bar mitzvah. And Mordechai Snyder said, do you want to come? And really, I have no real interest in going to Munkach, but I knew it was very close to. My mother had spoken all of her life about a bridge that went from Munkach to Rotzvigiv. And my mother's whole life, my mother, just to give you a little bit of an idea, she was like from a princess family of Munkach. My mother was, the richest man in town was her grandfather. She was a princess back in Munkach, and that was, her family was, when I would meet people, the Greenberg family, your grandfather Weiss, and she was like, and after the war, my father was a very wonderful guy, and she was but she didn't have what she had before the war. And my mother spoke many times about, and so I said, I'd go back. So I went back with Mr. Snyder, who was very kind. We went 7 of us back to Munkach for this Shabbos, where I wanted to go see where my mother grew up. I wanted to go see I wanted to walk where my mother walked. I wanted to see some of the things that my mother saw, heard about it all my life. I wanted to go back. So I just want to tell you one story that happened. I did see, there was a place, I went to see where, I didn't know exactly which my mother's home was. I had an idea, had a picture, but I knew I was in that right area. I went past the building that said, here's where the ghetto was, and I knew that my mother was in that ghetto before she went to Auschwitz, before she was taken away. I knew that. I want to tell you one story that happened in the shul. And Shabbos was one of the most unbelievable Shabbosim I've ever had in my whole life, maybe the best. They went into the shul that had been closed almost 70 years. It had been taken over during the war by the Germans, and the Russians took it over, and the Hungarians took it over afterwards, and the Russians, Hungarians. And for 70 years, 68 years, it was a pile of potatoes and onions and carrots and radishes. That's what sat in that shul, that famous shul of Munkach. That's the one thing that was in the shul there for 68 years. There's a very nice fellow, Alex Roth is his name, a fellow with a few dollars in his pocket, bought back the building, bought back this base medrash. And they had rebuilt this base medrash to something beautiful, and this was going to be the first davening ever in the shul in 68 years. It was going to be this davening in this shul in Munkach. And so I was going to be I didn't even realize exactly what was going on. I was going to be from the first people ever davening in the shul, in 68 years. It was a shul my grandfather davened in, my uncles davened in the shul, my aunts, my grandmother davened in the shul. I was going to walk into the same building that they had walked in, and that was going to be the first Shabbos that I was there, together with these 200 Hasidim of the Rebbe who were going to be there for that Shabbos. By the way, don't make a mistake. I don't go on a lot of trips, even though it sounds like I do. I really don't. And so for me, to go to Munkach was something unbelievable. But I want to tell you what happened on Friday night. Friday night was one of the most beautiful davenings I've ever heard in my whole life. The davening was 200 Hasidim dancing, singing, and I wished to open up the windows to show all the people from Hungary. Take a look, listen. The mayor had said during that day, he had said that more than half the people who lived in Hungary were Jewish. There were Yidden that lived, more than half the residents of Hungary, and now there were 300 Yidden, 600 Yidden, who knows how little they were living there now. But half of the entire Hungary was made up of Yidden. So at Friday night, we davened this beautiful davening that I wish, that I live with my memory, and we walked around to wish the Rebbe a good Shabbos after davening was over. The Munkach Rebbe from Borough Park, who was the grandson of we went to wish him good Shabbos, and suddenly the line stopped as we were walking around past the Munkach Rebbe. The line stopped there, and there was an old man who stopped in front of the Rebbe, and he was telling a story. And all of us got around behind this old man to listen to the story that he told. And he said, I was in this shul the last Shabbos. I was a young boy, I was 13, 14 years old. I was in the shul the last Shabbos when the Germans came in. I was in this shul. I was there with 30, 40 people, and the Germans came in with their dogs and their guns and they walked into this shul, and they ordered us to break our building. The shul that we had davened in, the space HaMedrash that we're standing in now, the one that we're in. He started crying, this older man. He said, I broke this base medrash. I was 13 and 14 years old. He said, with my own hands, I broke the walls and the doors and the of this Beis Medrash. He said, you can't imagine what I felt like all my life. And he turned to the Rebbe and says, here I am, 68 years later, I'm in the same Beis Medrash, and the Beis Medrash is rebuilt. He said, I can't imagine, you can't imagine what the Shabbos means to me. You can't imagine what it is that after all these years I've come back, and here is this Beis Medrash that's been rebuilt. So I just want to tell you one thing that happened. On the way back, so that story will never leave me as long as I live, because that's how I felt. And between me and you know, it's a little bit of a nechama for me, a little bit of a comfort for me when I went back and I went to see a little bit, and I heard that story, and I heard it was very, very important to me. I want to tell you the last thing that happened on our way out. On our way out, we caught a connecting flight each time in Germany. And on the way back, it's just impossible. Every time you go across the border, it's 2 hours, and each other 2 miles away is different. The Ukraine and the Romanian, and every time you go there, it's like you're by the border for hours. Until the way it worked out when we left, our stopping point each time was in Germany. One time was in Frankfurt, I think, I'm in Dusseldorf, I remember each time. And we got there in the morning. The only opportunity for us to daven was in the airport, Shacharis, in between our flight from Germany that was going to take us back to America. We had the connecting flight from Budapest to Germany. That was the only time. And there were 200 Yidden almost that took out their talis and tefillin in the middle of an airport. And I put on my talis and tefillin. You know how sometimes you do it, you're just embarrassed, you do it in public, I was in the hospital with my mother, and you put on your talis and tefillin, but the nurses walk in. I don't know that you should be embarrassed, the wrong word, but you feel a little bit uncomfortable that people are watching. But I put on the talis and tefillin in the airport in front of all the Germans, the ones that went out to destroy us, and maybe they didn't, maybe it was the grandparents, maybe some didn't know it, and there were 200 of us Hasidim that were sitting in the middle of this airport with beard and payas, just what they left behind, just all those years ago. And somehow that davening that I did in that airport was like the most different kind of davening that you could have ever imagined in your life. I said, this is what you try to do, and this is what we are, and this is who we are. Now, really, I was going to speak about Chesed, but I want to tell you a story that really, if you're giving Pesach, this is not really what the next day I was going to say, but I thought of the story that happened. I want to run it by you.
But I want to tell you something. That you can keep on going. If you want to come to Chesed later, that's also good. Okay. Maybe come a second time.
I want to tell you one thing about Chesed before I even speak. So I turned to her Pesach and said, listen, I get to speak different times. I said, tell me a little bit about the crowd that I'm going to speak to. You want me to speak about the Chesed that I'm involved in, that I do. What would you like? I want to tell you about this crowd, and I've never, ever heard anybody say this before I got to speak. Not only did he say it one time, Pesach said it 2 times. He said, this is a crowd that you're going to speak to that is the kindest crowd you've ever met. He said, if you speak to them, tell them they have to be careful how much chesed they do. Because sometimes it's not such a good thing when you go ahead and you do so much chesed that you... I said, Pesach, what are you talking about? He says, that's the kind of crowd you're speaking to. These are the nicest people that you're going to meet. And sometimes they do so much chesed that sometimes it's not, and it's an amazing thing. Here, I'm going to speak about chesed. He tells me, you got to tell them, they got to slow down a little bit. You have to be careful. But I'll tell you a story that happened before I get to that. I don't know how many years ago, because you don't even remember the story so well. About, let's say, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I get out of my car, Friday afternoon. I'm a Rebbe in TA for many years. And by the way, just to explain, something Pesach said, I would still be a Rebbe in TA. The rabbis of the town asked me to stop. They said that in the work that I did as a volunteer for 35 years, each year there are more and more families that my organization, that I am happy, thrilled to be a part of, called Ahavas Yisrael, has grown. I once showed Pesach, not the names, but I showed them the amount of families. There are almost 1,000 families in Baltimore that Ahavas Yisrael, the organization that I am a part of, have helped over the last many years. In order to do it properly, the Rabbanim felt I can't do it on a part-time basis. They felt, I've had people coming to my house for an hour and a half, family comes for 2 hours. They said, Baruch, you have to stop. You have to do it on a regular full-time basis. And Rabbi Haffer said, please stop being a Rebbe. I know it's something that you love to do, but we need you to help be able to be on call full-time 24 hours a day, which is really what the job is. I can get calls right after Shabbos, and the child calls right before Shabbos. Families don't have food for Shabbos. All the time, so they said, please stop. So him, Rabbi Haffer, and Rabbi Heinemann, there were a number of others that said, please stop teaching, which is a very hard thing for me to do. But we want you to go ahead and run this tzedakah, this Ahavas Yisrael, because you need somebody, if you have a $2.5 million that are going out on a regular basis each year, and it grows each year, you have to have somebody doing it full time. So a number of years ago, I come out of my car Friday afternoon, and there's this man walking back and forth in front of my house, forth and back and forth. And I open up the door and I say, okay, Shalom Aleichem, what is your name? He said, my name is Avraham Sapir Nishkov. This doesn't remember the name, but he remembers it now. And so I asked him, I said, can I help you? So, I don't know, comes into my house, older Russian man, and we start talking. And I get to know him a little bit, and he starts coming over, and he struggles a little bit. It was the Russian family of the father and the mother who have a son, and his father and the mother who have a daughter, and together they have one child, a 7-family unit living in one apartment in Millbrook. And this is one of the grandfathers of the son. Again, the father, mother, son, daughter, one son. There's this family of 7 living together in Millbrook, and this is one of the grandfathers. And we get to know him, and he comes over a little bit over here, and a little bit over there, and he comes over a few times after Shabbos for Havdalah. He comes over here, and we get to know the family a little bit, get to know the mother, get to know the wife. I'm going to skip ahead. We have a little bit of a relation with this older Russian fellow, and I invited him over to watch our B'dikas Chometz the night before Pesach, before Passover. I checked for Chuk, go around at night in the dark with the Gimel. Thought it's an interesting thing to see, and I invite this fellow over. I tell him, please come over, you can watch. And he comes over and he says, I have to tell you something. And I tell him, Avram, I don't talk, well, I do. I have to tell you something. So he tells me, he says, my son, who has a child, his wife's pregnant. I said, oh, I can't talk yet. He says, but they're going to knock off the baby. I said, excuse me? I said, I'm still doing the bracha. So finally we finished. I finally finished. I said, what? And he says, can you put your fingers in your ears for a second, please? Both fingers in. Tell me when you can't hear. Could you hear? Put your fingers in for 1 minute. He says, can you hear me? Guess not. Words, I guess, unfortunately. Okay, take your fingers out now. So they're going to report the baby. And I said, excuse me? What are you doing? He says, yeah. He says, we can't, Now put your fingers in your nose. So he said, this is what they're going to do. So I said, why? And he looks at me and he says, I want the baby. My wife wants the baby. He says, my son wants the baby. He says, they don't want it. Why not? He says, it costs too much money. I said, if you had money, then you would have? He says, yeah. He says, I don't know. I could ask. I said, okay. Tell him I'm going to give the money. Go back to your family. Tell him I'm going to give the money. So he says, you can give the money? I'll give the money. Goes back to his family. And he comes back to me 2 weeks later, and he says, I spoke to my family. They're going to have the child. And he sticks his hand out and says, okay, give me the money. So I said, no, that's not how it works. After you have the baby, give me a call. Give me a call, and we'll talk then. But my word is good. My word is good? Good. So I tell him, give me a call afterwards, and we'll deal with it afterwards. 4 weeks go by, I get another phone call from Avram Sapir. They're moving to Philadelphia. Why are we moving to Philadelphia? Because the government money in Philadelphia is much better. They're moving to Philadelphia, and they're all moving. He invites me over to the house for his party, and I go to his house with my wife. We say goodbye, we hug it. 7 months go by, 8 months go by. Friday morning, my wife gets a phone call that says, Avram Sapir on the phone. They just had a baby boy. They call my wife, I'm in school, baby boy. Says, wonderful. And he says, you know, they're going to make a circumcision now, they're going to do in the hospital right now. So my wife says, hold on. And she calls me up, I call him in the hospital, I said, don't touch that baby. Don't touch that baby. You want the money? Don't touch the baby. So you wait till next Friday, and we're going to have something called a bris for your grandson in Philadelphia. We're going to have a bris. He says, I said, remember what I said? He says, okay, deal. I said, and I'm going to call you, and I'm going to let you know what we're going to do in Philadelphia in a week, and what's going to happen in Philadelphia. Fine. So during that week, I call up, I have a friend's Ribiat, so I have a 15-passenger van. They're going to pick up the entire family. I call Mrs. Ribiat, I tell her buy everything that a baby needs. Go buy a carriage, car seat, and a stroller, and a thing in a bed, and a crib, and a dress, and I'm going to go buy everything. So I'll pay you back. You go ahead and you go pick up whatever you need to pick up in Philadelphia, whatever a baby needs, I'll let you know. We called up Rabbi, what's his name with a K, I forgot his name in a second, he left.
Kaplan.
No, was it Kaganoff over there?
Kaganoff.
Was Kaganoff was there?
It was
Rabbi
Kaganoff.
Kaganoff was Rabbi Kaganoff.
Yeah.
I called Rabbi Kaganoff, Kaganoff's brother, and I said, can I use your shul, can I use the hall for a bris on Friday? He said, who's it for? I said, it's for a Russian family that's going to make a bris, it's going to have a bris on Friday morning. So he says, sure. So he says, what about the food? I said, don't worry about a thing. I said, my wife's preparing everything. My wife's preparing everything, and we're going to have a bris Friday morning. There are 2 chairs over here if you want to. There are 2 chairs over here. 2 chairs? Sure. And so I tell him, Friday morning there's going to be a bris. So I get everything ready. And my first phone call is to Pesach. I said, Pesach. I said, you're coming on Friday to Philadelphia. I said, there's going to be a bris with this family, and I need you. And I'm there. I call up Moshe Rappaport, the mall in the city. And I tell Moshe Rappaport, I said, Moshe, I need you to come to Philadelphia on Friday. He said, what time do we have to leave? I said, we're leaving at 5 o'clock Friday morning from Baltimore to Philadelphia. There's going to be a bris for a baby in his Baruch. How do you know the baby in Philadelphia that needs a bris? Don't worry, Moshe. There's going to be a bris in Philadelphia next Friday morning, in a shul day. So sure enough, Moshe Rappaport takes the car, myself and Pesach, the 3 of us travel down to Philadelphia, and Mrs. Brull has an entire trunk full of food. Don't worry, plenty of vodka. We have the trunk is filled, and we down by Rabbi Laserson's Chakras, and then we go to what's called it. You don't remember? I'm reminding you. And then we go to the bris, and we prepare an entire bris, and there's an entire Russian crowd that really don't know anything, really a lost crowd to a great extent. And and the reason why I tell you the story is because, when I came, I'll tell you at the end. So sure enough, there's a bris milah made, and the people are watching. Can you imagine this baby bris milah on that Friday morning? So Rabbi Diskin speaks to the crowd, which is very wonderful. But he speaks to them in Russian. Somehow he's been able to figure out how to speak Russian, and he gives them an entire speech. And of course, Rabbi Rappaport and I are looking at each other, and our Russian's not that good. And so, sure enough, he gives them a speech, and then everybody's it's wonderful. And don't make a mistake. For this child, I sent them money for years. Every yontif that came, I sent them a check for $500. For Rosh Hashanah, $500 for Pesach, $500 for this, $500 for that. I never forgot to send them checks. I wanted to keep my word, and for years I sent them checks until the money started coming back. And it seemed that this Avram Pernishkov must have passed away, and the checks started coming back, removed, and I had no way of finding out who he was. And I knew that the child had gone on Shabbos to a shul, and I followed a little bit about this child, and it went on for years. So Pesach speaks there, and in the car on the way back, he said, okay, Pesach, what did you tell these people there? Do you remember what you said? Good thing I remember. So he said, Pesach said to this crowd, he said to them, how does it happen that on a Friday afternoon, a fellow walks out of his car, and he sees somebody walking back and forth, and he says, Shalom Aleichem to him, and he gets to know him a little bit, and he gets a little bit better, and he comes to his house, and then there you go, they move to Philadelphia, they have a baby, I gotta have the baby, they do have the baby, they goes to Philadelphia, and there's a bris. How is that possible? How does such a thing happen in this whole wide world? So Pesach's line to them was, there was once a bubby, and the bubby cried to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And she said, Hashem, he said, I've worked so hard on my Jewishness. I've worked so hard on my Yiddishkeit. I've done so much. He says, how is it that there won't be a bris for my child, won't be a bris for my child when the child is 8 days old? He said, how, for a grandchild, for a great-grandchild, he said, I've done so much, in my life. How is it that there wouldn't be? Hashem says, no problem. Brull's walking out of his car on Friday afternoon. I'm going to have the guy walk back and forth. And so, I thought to myself, here it is that, here it is like it's an old little thing. Which Bubby cried, and which Zayda cried, and in Russia for all those years that they said, you can't, you're not allowed, we're going to kill you, we're going to take it away from you, and that there should be such a beautiful community. Pesach is something so special over these years. So, it was that Bubba that was Mispal. I'll tell you a story about Chesed. That's my topic. I want to tell you a story that happened when I was in Eretz Yisrael. Something that I never forgot. I've written 2 books on Chesed. One called For Goodness Sake, and my last book that we wrote was called Who Cares? And in the book, there are together must be almost 200 short stories of people who did nice things. I love to watch when people do nice things, and some people see and they forget. I see and I don't forget. I watch people who do nice things. They're not all my stories, but I go over to a person, I would say, Pesach, and I did this a couple of times, and I said, Pesach, tell me the nicest story that you saw somebody do something nice. And he would tell me the story, and I would find out if it's true. So I put out the books. I'll tell you one of the stories that stays with me, that I love. I went to Israel with my wife. I've only been there twice in my life. Many people have been much luckier than I have been there many more times, but I've only been there twice. And so, I think it was the second time that we went. My wife planned it from morning to night, night to morning. Every time we made a step, my wife knew exactly where we were going, because we were going to fit everything into those 2 weeks that we went. We were going to fit everything into those 2 weeks. And so, sure enough, one night we finished our full day of traveling around, and there's a street called, I'll think of it in a second, what's the famous street called? Shabbos, it's the street goes through Malkah Yisrael, wasn't it?
Malkah Yisrael.
No, it's Malkah Yisrael. I think it was a street called Malkah Yisrael. The street called Malkah Yisrael, on that street. And so it's an amazing thing, because many of the stores there sell one thing. Here you go into a restaurant that's selling 92 items. Many of the stores sold one item. The pizza shop pretty much only sold pizza. So the store that we walked by was selling falafel. And so you looked at the window, it was like a small window. Got the falafels up from the bottom all the way to the top of the window. You could barely see the guy, couldn't see past the falafels. And we walked into the store, and we ordered 2 falafels. My wife and I, it was a full day of traveling around. And we ordered, each one ordered falafels. So we go into the store. Every inch in Eretz Yisrael is worth $9 million. Who knows how much money the Eretz Yisrael costs. So in the store there were 3 little tables. One here, a little second table here, one there. And we sat down on the second table to eat our falafels that were made. And we're not there more than, I don't want to say a minute, 2-5, as a guy who shows up by the window, a man, just must be like the poorest looking man I ever saw. And he's wearing a raincoat with plastic on him, with clothing and torn shoes, and you just looked at him and you just felt horrible for him. And I'm sure, he hadn't seen a shower in months. And I'm sure he hadn't, and he was just one of these people that were one of the sad people in life. And he puts his head by the window, and I'm watching this with my wife. He puts his head by the falafel store window, and the falafel store owner, this Israeli fellow with his hat on backwards, looks at him and says to him, "Would you like a falafel?" And the poor man says to him, "Yes, but I don't have any money." And the falafel store owner asks him, says, "Did I ask you if you had any money? I asked if you would like a falafel." So the poor man says, "Sure, I would love a falafel." So he says, "Come inside." So we're sitting on the second table, and the first guy sits down over on this first table, and he turns to his worker and he says, "We have a big falafel. And he fills up this whole falafel, and he brings it to him, and he puts it down, and this guy won the lottery. He looked at him, there was nothing better that he could have had in his life than this big falafel that he sat down there. I was very touched by this Israeli fellow who didn't think twice. He said, did I ask you if you had money? Or did I ask if you wanted a falafel? So I don't let these things pass. And I asked my wife, who speaks much better Hebrew than me, she went to Beis Yaakov by your father, where she learned her Hebrew. I went to Tarvadas, we learned Hebrew there. And so I told my wife, tell him in Hebrew, please. I said, tell him I saw what he did. And what he did was very beautiful. And so my wife turns to this guy, and she says to him, she says in Hebrew, I can't do it. She says, my husband loves to watch people do nice things. And he said, he saw what you did. We both saw what you did. What you did was very beautiful. We just wanted you to know. Because I didn't have to tell him anything, but I wanted him to know that I saw. So his face, tell me now, remember till today, turned colors. It turned to a different shade of red. I got upset almost, like, look like. And he said, Zechiyuv. He says, that's our responsibility. He says, we look out for each other. That's what Klal Yisrael does. He says, what's your question? What's your husband's point? Why is your husband pointing out that? He says, Zechiyuv. That's what we do for each other. Klal Yisrael, everybody looks out for each other. And we take care of each other. It was like a, what are you talking about? That's a given. That's what we do. I told my wife, forget the other million things that we did there in those 10 days that my wife had planned. I said, that story in itself, if I walked away with that from Eretz Yisrael of Zechiyuv, this is something that, this is something that you don't forget. That in itself was I'll tell you a story that happened over here. For 30 years, I was lucky enough to sit next to a fellow by the name of Rabbi Mendy Friedman, who was their brother-in-law. And Mendy Friedman sat here. I davened in Rabbi Taub Shul, and Mendy Friedman sat here. And sitting to my right, I felt the same privilege sitting next to somebody named Rabbi Nosson Friedman, who was a 9th grade Rebbe in, I already made a bracha, in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Friedman said, it was really a privilege. I sat next to him for 30 years. I feel bad. They both no longer daven next to me. That was here, that was there. But it was a privilege to sit next to them for 30 years in the shul. So Nosson Friedman shared this story with me. And he told me when he was when it's too long, he told me to stop. Anytime. If it's too long now, stop now.
We start walking now.
You start looking at your watch.
The calendar.
So maybe I'll just... maybe it's too long. Okay, I'll tell you this one last story. Then I'll stop. I'll tell you one last story. Okay, and the last story is that Rabbi Nosson Friedman told me that he lived on Yeshiva Lane. Today he's a Rebbe in Israel, and he lived on Yeshiva Lane. And one morning he gets a knock at the door early in the morning, and it's Nachman Kowalski, Rabbi Kowalski. And he knocks on his door, and he says, I have an emergency. So Nosson Friedman's getting ready for davening. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, whatever. He says, he has an emergency. So he says, you have an emergency? He says, yeah, I have an emergency. So Nosson doesn't know, never came over before. He has an emergency. Quickly starts running. They run to his house, and he takes out, he looks around, says, should I call Hatzolah? No, Hatzolah that. Should I call 911? Should I call what? Should I call the police? Should I call this one? He says, no. He says, what's the emergency? And he takes out a mirror. Takes out a small mirror. And he gives it to Nosson Friedman. He says, this is the emergency. Nosson Friedman says, emergency? He says, could you read what it says on the mirror? He says, no, not really. He says, that's the emergency. He says, what's your emergency? He says, every morning I put on my tefillin. So, some people do it, some people don't. He says, I have a mirror. I look at the mirror. And I've written on my mirror, you should love your friend like yourself. It's the first thing I look at every morning when I put on my tefillin. I look at this mirror that says, that you should love your friend like yourself. And it's all smudged, I can't read it. So I'm going to go down this morning, I'm not going to see those 3 words, But now, Rabbi Friedman is a sofer. He's a very wonderful artist. He says, I need you to fix the lettering on this mirror of love your friend like you love yourself, before I begin davening this morning. So he took the mirror home, and he printed it, love your friend like yourself, and he gave it back to Rav Kowalski. Rav Kowalski thanked him. Every few weeks after that, Rav Nosson would go over to his house, and he would fill in the words on his mirror to make sure it didn't get rubbed out, because then Rav Kowalski was able to go daven when he saw the words, How should I end? What should I say? I'm not sure. Well, I want to tell you one thing, only because this is something that Rabbi Biskin mentioned to me, and that is, I had a phone call already twice over the last couple of weeks. People do chesed. So when people do chesed, you have to, I'm not, this is a crowd of chesed. So he said, something you have to be careful when you do chesed too. I know of a family that took in a girl by them, and that's the most wonderful chesed. And they took in somebody to live by them, and most times it works out great for the family, great for the girl. Sometimes it hurts the family, sometimes it's not good. Some of the girls, their own girls said, that girl's getting more attention than us, when you do a chesed, even though it's a hard thing to say because we're a nation of chesed, sometimes you have to be careful, when it comes to, sometimes you have to make sure that it doesn't affect your family. You have to make sure that with the chesed that you do doesn't affect what you do at home with your family. Things that you do at home, make sure that if you're running out, between my wife and myself, it was always one of us home. If one of us was doing something, the other one was always home making sure that the home fort wasn't being lost along the way also. So, chesed is what we're all about. And I'll leave you with this then. I asked your uncle, Shmuel Kamenetsky, I said, when I speak about chesed, what should I tell the people? And he said that, if he said over from Rav Chaim Voloshin, was what your uncle told me. And he said, when people do kind things, he says, when Hashem made people, God made people, He didn't make people for themselves. He didn't make you for yourself. He made you to help others. And I got a last line that I'll tell you. He said, you were made to help others. One of the places we go to help in Ahavas Yisrael is the Weinberg Foundation. A story for a different day. But they help Ahavas Yisrael. But one of the things that I saw a line on the guy's desk, and I'll leave you with this. And the line was like a plaque on the thing, and I read it. And it says, and the fellow asked God, that's what it said on his desk. He says, God, there is so much suffering in the world. He says, why don't you send help? And the respondent said, I did. I sent you. A good Tevach. If somebody like to hear something, I'm happy to hear it. But I'm sure Rabbi Diskin knows the answer better than I do.
See more questions. Is there any questions?
I'm sure no question. Yes.
I work in downtown DC, and I walk down the streets. I see poor people on the streets all the time. Obviously, they're mostly not Jewish people, but I see them every day. They're regularly on the corners. Is there something that I can do to help them that is the right thing? I mean, I help my own community, obviously, but I see these people there too. What obligation do I have towards them?
Well, in Ahavas Yisrael, there are people that will come to us also that are not Jewish. And so certainly it's, everybody. So that's a good question. And there are many organizations. There is a United Way that sends people in our direction too. We work with the JCS, and also. So I don't know how to clearly help. I mean, I know that there was a fellow who came to my house who was a non-Jewish person. Rabbi Haffer took $20 out of his pocket. He said, "Give him my $20." So I saw Rabbi Haffer, with my own two eyes, do that, and he said, give him my money. But certainly, there's an obligation to help everybody, but I don't know all the answers. There are, I could say in my many years in Baltimore, the Baruch Hashem, I don't know of any family that ever slept on the street. I would like to take, the Ahavas Yisrael would like to take some of that credit. I put people up in hotels, I put people up in different places. We really try that to help everybody. That's something that we try very much to do. It's a good question, it's hard to help everybody. Rabbi Diskin.
Thank you very much.
Good to talk, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.